I'm Sandra Pollard, speaking from Whidbey Island, the site of the infamous August 8, 1970 Pen Cove capture, when the whole of the southern resident community, including Lolita, was driven into Pen Cove by the Orca cowboys, Donald Goldsberry and Ted Griffin. Today, half a century later, Lolita remains in lockdown at the Miami Aquarium, while her presumed mother, Ocean's son, now the matriarch of the southern resident population, waits for her daughter to come home. I'll now read from Puget Sound Whales for Sale, The Fight to End Orca Hunting, which depicts the sad history of the capture era here in Washington state, of which Lolita is the sole survivor. A floating pen was set up to corral and separate the mothers and calves. Piercing, screaming vocalizations rent the air as the trapped whales thrashed and twisted in confusion, fear and panic. It was a sight and sound that would haunt the local residents forever. Longtime resident Lila Snover, who lives on the shoreline of Pen Cove, has never forgotten the incessant cries. She recalls clearly how her children asked, "Why are they crying? They're crying," as the whales' plaintive calls carried across the cove. "It was terrible, just terrible, like a prison camp. It was awful," Lila said, and I think everybody that remembers it will tell you that. It was just one of the most horrible things I've witnessed in my life. Soon about 25 whales were corralled in 2 net pens about 100 yards long and 50 yards wide. 15 in one pen, 10 in the other. Those that remained free stayed outside the nets, about 200 yards away, restlessly patrolling the outskirts of the pen. The capture team had already started pushing some of the large males away through devised breaks in the netting to reduce their selection to the smaller females and calves, 2 to 5 years old, between 11 and 15 feet long. Griffin had orders for half a dozen whales to fulfill. He did not want nursing whales or any less than 10 feet long. On Monday, August 10th, Griffin made his first selection, a young 16-foot female. After successfully lassoing the animal, the constricting rope was tightened around her body. Half a dozen men on the dock dragged and pulled the young female toward divers waiting to maneuver her onto a canvas sling. Overseen by a representative from the Department of Game, she was tied to a skiff and hauled to the old standard oil dock at Sandra Pollard to undergo the usual procedure. The sling was hooked onto a crane, hoisted from the water, suspended in the air, and lowered onto a flatbed truck owned by a landscaper from Oak Harbor, ready for transit to the Seattle Marine Aquarium. The last helpless victim to be taken away to a new life far removed from her family was Lolita, also known as Tokitae, the only surviving southern resident still alive in captivity. Pixie Mailer, a resident of Oak Harbor, recounted, "There was a bunch of us who went down every day, and it's the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life. It should never have happened. The whales cried. We watched them load them, and saw them specifically load a small one in the back of a truck. I think it was probably Lolita, and she cried and cried and cried the whole way. It's a sound you don't forget. You just don't. I'll never forget it." Thank you.